All right, well, happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. We were a little light on Monday, but it was a holiday, so kind of expected that. So tonight it's pitch decks. Pitch decks can be fun. Who did I see? Ashton Kutcher was at TechCrunch, and he's like, don't stress over the deck. Like people are all wrapped up in their pitch decks. So I have to disagree with Ashton Kutcher because you shouldn't stress over your deck, but you should definitely have a deck, a slide deck. The pitch decks, that's what we're talking about.
So when we pitch we have our pitch, we're supposed to have a slide deck too.
You don't have to have a deck, but we do recommend it. Okay, so here's how to think about your deck. You guys are going on a blind date, and you want to remember to talk about all of your best features. And so that's what the deck is for when you're presenting your company. So you're going to talk, you're the star of the show, but whatever's on your deck is going to emphasize the points that you're trying to make. So it's either going to reinforce, or it's going to emphasize, or it's going to enhance what you're doing. It's going to make something memorable because it's cute or funny. So that's the purpose of the deck. It has a normal sort of rhythm to it. And so we'll go over that now. Ray still isn't in.
Yeah, I know. I think there's more people having, like Mark too. I think it's a Zoom thing. It's not an us.
Mark was in earlier. Welcome back, Mark, if you make it. Okay, so we're going to tell a story with the deck. And I do like the old blind date sort of reference. So you're going to put the major points that you want to make on the deck. So let's get going. Everybody's checked in who's here. I see, oh, hello, Mohammed. Okay, we are in pitch decks, and there's a mentor session afterwards tonight. Next week on Monday, we have a guest speaker, Mark Sivey. Remember, I told you he has a PhD in pricing. And so he's going to talk about the things that you could think about as you're trying to figure out what your prices are going to be. And then sales and financials with a mentor session. I don't know who's teaching that. It might be me. Not sure. And then we're going to have pitch practice and feedback on December 2nd. If you recall, I said I will not be here. That's right after Thanksgiving weekend. And my daughter's coming to town, so I'm going to stick around and visit with her. But I will be here on the 4th. So we will have people here on the 2nd who will give you feedback, though, on your presentations, your practice. Here we go. This is the 101 version. Andrew, are you trying to admit people too?
Yeah, and they're just stuck saying joining.
I have a feeling they're using their iPhone too.
We think it's an iPhone issue?
I think it's an iPhone issue.
It's almost a full moon. It could be related.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to pitch decks. So we're going to talk about basic content and style. You need to know who your audience is. One of the reasons that this is important is because if you're going to go into detail about any ask that you have that is an investment, you have to know that everybody in the room is an accredited investor if you're giving away specific deal information. You can be cagey about your deal, like we're raising $1 million, talk to me later, and that's fine. People who are not accredited can hear that. But if you're going into your deal terms, then you have to be sure who your audience is. And if your audience are not investors, then you might make your deck have a different flavor to it, something more entertaining and not so focused on what investors want to hear. If you can have a deck for customers too. And so the deck for the customers, of course, you're not going to go into what it costs for you to make your product. But for an investor, you will. You're going to have 6 to 8 topics here. I think we have 8 or 9 topics. And it's nice if you tell a story because your deck then and your pitch becomes memorable. If you're in a situation where there's, like for demo day, there's going to be many, many people pitching, it's hard to stand out. It's hard to listen to pitches all day long, and it's hard to present all day long. So you are going to be more successful if you're able to make a story around it so that it is memorable. Basic style is one idea per slide. We don't want to combine the business model and the competition on one slide. We want one slide per thought. You want to use a large font, so you want to make sure that people in the back of the room have no trouble seeing what the people in the front of the room can see. And to that same point, we're going to use very few words on the slides. The slides are meant to enhance or emphasize. These are the basic categories that we usually want to see in a 10-minute pitch. If you have a shorter pitch than that, you're going to have to eliminate some of these topics, or you're just going to have to do it quicker. But in a 3-minute pitch, you can't cover all these things. In a 3-minute pitch, you want to have some cute story that makes people sit forward and say, tell me more. And that is our goal with the pitch deck anyway. It is to give enough information and to tease enough that whoever is watching it says, I want to know more. So that means you're not going to tell them everything in the first pitch deck. All right, so we usually start with the problem or the pain point. We're setting the stage. You can often tell the story about why you're solving this particular pain point. It became very obvious to you that this problem needed to be solved because whatever happened. So that's how you can start telling your story. And then you can come in with, I was so frustrated by this that I spent 3 months devising something. And that's your solution slide. So with the solution slide, if it's a piece of software, I would rather have the slide just say the general thing that it does. When it's a piece of software and people send me screenshots, screenshots are a waste of time. They cannot be perceived by the people in the back of the room. If somebody's watching it on a computer that's this big, it's still hard to see what's in a screenshot that's on a slide. So you're better off just telling them what it does and how it works. The market opportunity, yes, sir.
You're presenting a new idea, like innovative, that nobody has. How do you kind of wrap it in a bow to say, here's the problem, which is that it's not done before? How does that?
So the question is, since we didn't get him the microphone, is if you're doing something that's new that hasn't been done before, how do you explain the problem and then your solution so that people understand it, since the problem hasn't been solved before? Well, when we get to the competition slide, we're going to say there is competition and it's the status quo. So if you notice that there is a problem, whatever it is, if it's super technical, then you're going to hope that you have technical listeners, right? Or that the investors at least have enough range of experience that they would be able to relate to it. So if it's a particular problem that you're solving for software engineers, where there's this thing that they have to keep coming back and going to, you can explain that, right? Like a software engineer has to do these things and they end up having to have 3 screens because they have to keep referring to this other piece of data. And my solution is this. So you can talk about it in normal enough terms to explain kind of what the situation is. So they're having to do all of this reference work, and it's inefficient and it's costing time and money. Right? So you're making the problem real. And then your solution is, ta-da, there's this thing that stays resident on the screen and you're still able to work, whatever it is. I'm not a software engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So you try to relate it to stuff that people will understand, especially investors. Investors can be smart or they can be not so smart.
I have
Hold on. Hold please.
I have this exercise invention that's early stages,
Yes.
really early, like the prototype might not be done for a year. I've been working on it for about a year. One of the things that I'm doing, and the competition are things that try to do what mine does, but aren't really that great. So in a way I could say, I don't think there's competition, but here's what's out there that doesn't work well.
Oh, of course.
And either I could bring these in and show people and put a picture in the deck. Would that work?
Yes, you could show your competition and say how it doesn't measure up.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, so we were on market opportunity. We talked about TAM, SAM, SUM a couple visits ago, or was it Monday? I don't remember. And so that is the market opportunity. How big a playground are you playing in? So are there lots of people who are going to be buying this? Are there very few people who are going to be buying it, but they're willing to pay a lot of money for it? So the market opportunity is of great interest to the investors. The business model. The business model is who do you sell to, how do you sell it, and what does it cost? So if it is a physical good, you know what it costs to make it. If it is software, then for your business model, you're going to talk about your pricing. And if you have different tiers, you're going to explain what those are. That's how business model works. Competition. I think I put competition right after the market opportunity and the rest of the deck, and that's actually where I prefer to see it. It can be after the business model, but you do have competition, and it may just be status quo. It may be like Henry Ford. I usually tell this when we get to the slide. Henry Ford was making a car, and everybody else was using horses. Okay, so it was something completely new, but that was his competition, people getting around on foot, on bicycles, or on horseback. So he had to talk about how his vehicle was better, more efficient, and not as dangerous as people would think that it was. Traction. Traction is sales. Everything else are milestones. Traction is sales. It's not LOIs, letters of intent. It's not partnerships with other groups that are going to help you get paid. Traction is sales. If you don't have sales, don't include it. Your team, what makes you special? Why is your team going to be successful at doing this product or service right now? What experience do you bring to the table? Why is the time right for your solution? And then the ask. Again, the ask is the one that you're going to have to be careful with if you don't know who your audience is. But if you are speaking to investors, there are certain things that they want to know. They want to know how much. They want to know what your vehicle is, and if there's any discounts or valuation caps, or if it's a convertible note. So we'll get to all of these things. I've got good examples and bad examples. With the problem, less is more. A lot of times when engineers are presenting, they spend a long time on the problem and they spend a long time on the solution. What are the investors interested in? The market opportunity, your sales, and what you're asking. So if the problem cannot be grasped quickly, then you're going to have to make it as simple as possible to get to the next stuff. You should only be spending about a minute on this in a 10-minute pitch. And then you can use pictures as demonstration. Here is a poor example. So there's a lot of words, there's an image, there's stuff over here in a box, and lots of words. So this fella had an array that tested DNA, and it could find markers on the DNA if you were going to get cancer. And they could identify by the different cells what sort of cancer it would be. You have to read this and think about it to understand what he's saying. And this is such a miraculous thing. It's like it could be so much simpler. Here it is, much simpler. I remade his slide. It's not even that beautiful. 1 in 2 people would get cancer. Wouldn't you like to know what kind? Then you can behave differently. All right, now this was a silly product, but I loved his images. It says overheating is a real problem, and he shows a car overheating, and his product is like a donut seat that had a cooling fan. So it would prevent men from overheating. Maybe he just should wear linen instead of blue jeans. Okay, the solution slide. You can spend up to 2 minutes on this. Again, engineers love to go into great detail about their solution when people really don't need to know how it works for the most part. You might want to tell them how it works if it's different from what's already on the market. You can use pictures if you have them. Do not demo and don't use screenshots. I say this all day long. People don't listen to me. They include screenshots, but you're just better talking about how it works instead of trying to show what the app looks like. People know how apps look. And then you should be telling us how your solution is 10 times better than what's out there. Go ahead. People, when I say don't use screenshots, they think they're going to demo an app on the phone, which is even worse than having it on the screen. At least on the screen, it's this big. Otherwise, it's this big. Yeah, so don't demo an app. If you have an interesting product that is physical and it does something that's entertaining and people could see it in the back of the room, then you might demo it. You might just put it up there on your podium with you so people can see it, but you talk about how it works. Again, we have an example. Okay, so what's wrong with this slide? There's lots and lots of words. There's a screenshot, and it's a screenshot with text. So that's great. Yes. What I do like about this slide is they were providing childcare with cameras. So they were picking kids up and taking them to childcare. So they had cameras. So what they're trying to demonstrate with the screenshot was like you had a camera view into where your kids were. They did use a font that's sort of kid-like, Comic Sans, but there's entirely too much information on here. And you probably got more out of my telling you what their product did than reading all that stuff. So that's why you just tell people what it does. Now here's one that I like. This is one of the companies that we have invested in. It was Hi Bear, the all-day adventure flask. And this slide shows the different features that it has. And he would typically have one in front of you and he would unscrew things and release them because this is actually the cup down here and you just lift it off. He had a strainer and the pour over and he started this company. It's a cute story. He and his wife would go hiking all over the world. They would climb the really high mountains and they were constantly craving pour over coffee. And he said the coffee in Chile is horrible and Peru. And so they wanted to bring their own coffee and just be able to pour water over it. So it's got a filter. It also has a cold thing so you can make cocktails with it too. Now this is especially good if you want an espresso martini. I'm not sure the coffee flavor from your pour over is going to go well with a lemon drop, but it all depends on how well you clean it. So here is the cup. So I don't know if you can see it, but there is a topographical map down here. So it's very on theme. Yeah, can you see it in the, oh, you really can barely see it. Yeah, so it's got some high peaks listed there, but that's just sort of background.
Maggie, we have a question online.
Yes, ma'am.
So which font do you suggest when making a pitch deck?
You want a font that is not distracting. So if you, so a font that's easy to read from the back of the room, using a font like, I always recommend sans serif. These are the, this one doesn't have serifs. No, it doesn't. Just very plain, easy to read fonts. Unless you are doing some artistic thing. If you're doing an artistic thing, you can have a more artistic font. So it sort of needs to match what your business is.
Okay, I'm coming. Hold on.
Is it in the PowerPoint on the website? Yeah, it should be linked on Disco. It's not there? Oh, okay. Well, that could be because I was telling Cara that I changed some slides, so she may have taken it down, but it'll be there by tomorrow. Okay. For the market, if you are prepped, you can spend a minute on this. Remember, we talked about TAM, SAM, SOM. So if you're doing the research properly and you're able to depict it in that stacked Venn diagram, then you can talk a little bit about it. Of course, to get to your SOM, you will have done a ton of research and done your projections and figured out what your revenue was going to be in 3 to 5 years. So you would be able to stand there on Shark Tank and answer all the questions that they have. So you would be able to speak about it. So again, create your bottom-up obtainable market. Don't make the mistake of just saying, if we get just 1% of the TAM, it would be this big of a company. That is the lazy man's way out, and investors know that. And so if you haven't done the proper market research, it's going to be very obvious. And one of the reasons that Ashton Kutcher was like, don't do the pitch deck, don't worry about it, is because so many people get TAM, SAM, SOM wrong that it's almost useless to even look at it. But then it's such a refreshing surprise when somebody does it right. All right, so we're going to talk about your major market. If we had a company pitch who was doing a coating, and their first market was going to be aviation, because it coated the outside of the plane, the fuselage, and it made it last much longer, and it didn't add as much weight as paint did. So that was their first market. They had several secondary and tertiary markets, but that was the one that they talked about. If anybody suggested it, an investor asked a question, well, what else can you do? Like, he could rattle it off. So you need to know what your secondary and tertiary markets are, if you have them, but we're really going to focus only on our primary market when we're doing the slide. All right, again, we have a rather poor example because we have a lot of stuff going on in this slide. We've got a graph here, we've got like a mini table there, we've got a big red 52%, and it's just too much. So this fella had an app for people who had parents that were in extended care, that they would be able to hear from the caregivers very easily. All they had to do was install it at the facility and then just pick up and say, pick the patient and just do a quick update. And so the point that they were trying to make with the market is that baby boomers are aging, and there are going to be a lot of people that are in care facilities. So it's like beds, there's going to be 5 million in 2030, and in 2020 there were 2.7 million. So I remade his slide again, and even this is still kind of busy, but 52% of these baby boomers are going to need long-term care. And this was the pertinent information. The information that needs to be emphasized is the number of beds that are going to be needed. Questions? Okay. All right, and then this fella, the colors are not super great, well, from where I'm standing, but if you can see them well, that's great. He has a real subtle sort of rocket saying that his business is really going to grow. He was doing software that was for construction industry, and I think he said that his sweet spot was large contractors, and there are 15.5 thousand of them in the country, or contractors that had more than 20 employees. So not your just family run contractors. And it was taking all of the bids that you get for the different component parts in a house construction, the plumbing, the electrical, all those things. And it made it so that they had access to a database they created of all these different vendors. It could track who the preferred vendors were for the contractors, and it would make a pick list. And then it was also an order list. So it would send the order to the manufacturer. So they didn't get very far though. But a $1.8 billion market, 144 is achievable. That was in the US. And then they thought they could get to 45 million within 3 years. All righty. Competition, as I said, don't say that there isn't any, because status quo can be your competition. It can be the worst sort of competition. And that's why we do customer discovery. If we go back to one of our first sessions, we do customer discovery to determine that the pain point that you've identified is something that people want to fix. Because you could have all sorts of people figuring out different ways to solve this problem, and it doesn't cost them anything. And so they may not be willing to pay for your solution. You should be thorough in your research and then use the ones that are going to show up on a phone. If somebody's listening to your pitch and your product does this, if they put that into Google, you want to make sure that the companies that return are the ones that you're depicting as your competition. If there's a big company in there and you've missed it, you lose credibility. And that's really kind of the whole thing with a pitch deck. With each slide, you can gain credibility or you can lose credibility. And so you want to make sure that you're doing it right.
You just said if there's a big company, you lose credibility.
No, no, no. If you don't include the big company that somebody finds when they search, if it's not in your competition list, then they're wondering if you're trying to hide something or if you don't know your market. So that's how you would lose credibility. If you're doing a price comparison, make sure you do it every time you give that pitch. You don't want to have somebody, again, look on their phone and find that the product that competes with yours is suddenly $20 cheaper than whatever you depicted as the price. So you have to be diligent. You may be better off, and I'm going to show you some examples, you may be better off just kind of like not putting an exact price in, but using dollar signs to represent relative prices. So your product costs $2, the next product costs $3 signs. So that one's more expensive than yours. In this way, then you don't have to be as diligent about checking the price every time. You should still spot check it every 3 months or so. And you don't need to spend a ton of time on the competition, because the more time you spend on it, the more they're going to pick up their phones and look. So this is a rack up or a matrix. And so when you're listing your company, you either want to be first or last. Here in this country, we read from this side to this side. So your company would be the first one that they would see. Or if you want to have a big impact, you can be over here. Can you guys see with my podium in the way here? Yeah, you've got them over here. Yeah, so the price down here, again, we're using the dollar signs to just kind of depict relative pricing. And you want to list your features that the others don't have. If you know that a competitor has a feature that you don't have to include it, but you should be prepared. You should definitely know who your competitors are and how they rack up against you, so that if somebody asks the question, you have an answer. And I didn't include that feature because it makes it weigh a lot more, or it makes the cost go up. You should have a reason for why you didn't include that feature. The best answer is that that always breaks. So they say they have that feature, but it's not worth it. All right, so again, this is an actual competition slide that I saw in a deck. And it doesn't really share much information. This company, I believe, was trying to create a brand new league of sumo wrestlers. And they figured that their competitors were professional sports teams and also the college sports teams. They were definitely doing something that didn't exist in this country. I don't know if it does yet. I don't know if it needs to. All right, and now here is a super busy slide that I didn't replace. Maybe I did. Nope, I didn't. Okay. When I am copying over other people's slides, I don't like to put my stuff underneath it, because then that detracts from it. All right, so what's wrong with this slide? Yep, too much, too small. All they really have to do is put the names of their competitors, and then they can talk about how they're different or better. Their unique advantages. So they have them down here. They really could just do a lot more just by talking than having all this stuff up here. And here's the reason. when you put words on the slide, you're asking people to read them. And they will do that. And when they're reading, they've got their voice in their head, reading the words, they're not listening anymore. And that's why when you're making a slide, you want very few words. You do want engaging pictures though, because that'll put them in a good mood. All right, so this is the same company that we saw before with the all-day adventure flask. I like his competition slide. He does make the mistake of putting actual pricing in. And I have to tell you that he's had to raise his prices too. But having a thumbs up, that is very typical of him. It fits right with his personality. And the check marks you can see are a little bit lighter. And so what stands out are all the good features and not the poor features. So I'm having a hard time reading it. These are the colors that are more what he put on his slide. This is weird. And here is another group. Up at UNR, they have a competition called the Sontag competition, and it's in the School of Business, but it was an endowment given by this fellow Sontag, and so every year they have a business plan competition, and the winner gets $50,000. No strings attached. It's just a prize. They don't have to put it in their business. But this one called Stern Design, it's now called Truck House, was the winner one year. And they actually took pictures of all of the likely competition. It's a little bit difficult in that you don't actually see the relative size. One of the features that they talk about for theirs, which is built on a Tacoma truck chassis, is that it's smaller and can go to more off-road places than some of these larger trucks. And so they did a very nice job. Another subtle thing they did was they made the check marks for the good features of the other competitors smaller than the check marks of theirs. Little psychology going on there. So they did a nice job of covering everything that needs to be talked about. All right, moving on to business model. So when we get a deck, yes, ma'am.
Oh, hold on, hold on. People online are like, we can't hear. I'm on my way.
Do I have to press anything?
No.
Okay. For the competitors, so I sell wool cat toys and wool cat caves. So would my competitors be different platforms? Like let's say one from a big box store, one from Amazon, one from Etsy, one from a pet store? Or how do I classify my competitors?
All right, so for the people in the room, she makes these wool cat toys. And she's asking whether her competitors are the big box stores or the other retailers. Are you selling on your own website?
Yes, that and Etsy.
That and Etsy. I think that your competitors are more likely other people who make cat toys.
Oh.
Okay, so you actually have two different ways to look at it. Like you're a more crafty version of what they can get in the big box stores. So in that way, it's a different channel. Your business model is different because you're selling it through Etsy, the craft group, and online versus retail, which, they're going to take more money.
Okay.
You're not going to make as much money. But really what you're making are cat toys. So your competitors are other cat toys.
Thank you.
Okay,
Maggie, we have two questions online.
go ahead with one.
Okay, Teresa would like to know how many completions should you have?
Competitors?
Completions. I think competitors, yes. She's shaking her head. Yes, competitors.
Well, it depends on how many you have. Remember I said you want to make sure that you have your biggest competitors. So if you're uncertain who to include, just do a search, a Google search, and see who pops up first. You want to make sure you include those. If you have lots and lots of competitors, if you're entering a market, like the slide that we saw a little bit ago, where Facebook and forget Match, who were their competitors? Facebook, Meetup, and Bumble. Okay, these are well-established, really large competitors. So you have a strike against you already because you're entering a market that is already got dominant players in it. So you can't not include them. But by the same token, how are you going to stand out? So you want to have enough competitors that you could reasonably go after one of them. I think that this company would have a hard time going after any one of those, unless there's something really unique about what they're doing. Pair or group options, to me, that's not unique enough. A designated platform, I don't care. User control on criteria. Well, okay. I don't know that that's enough to make somebody switch. So the answer to your question is, how many competitors should you have? At least 3 if you do have competition. If you don't have competition, then you can call it indirect competition. And that is something that is serving as a solution right now, even though it's not as elegant as your solution. So again, we can gain credibility by being thoughtful about the competitors that we include. And if we don't have a ton of giant competitors, then being thoughtful about how people are currently solving the problem. You had a question.
I want to know more about this competition where you can earn $50,000.
Oh, you have to be a UNR student.
Oh,
Are you?
no.
Okay. So the Sontag competition is for UNR students.
Okay.
But they
And
don't have
Maggie-
to be in the business school. So that's good news. Yes, Andrew.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. One more question from online. Johnny would like to know, do you have any tips on how to show competition to the status quo?
Yeah, so the status quo is like whatever solution people are using currently, even if it's not a technological solution. So I said you could call that like indirect competition. So that's what people are doing now to solve whatever the problem is. You can say you have no direct competitors. But again, I think I referred somebody to Crunchbase and they said they had a hard time and spent a lot of time looking through Crunchbase to try to discover if there were other startups in different parts of the country that were trying to solve the same problem. And dollars to donuts, there is probably somebody who is trying to solve the same problem someplace else. It's just a question of whether you can find them or not and how much traction they have. All right, for the business model, what are you selling? How are you going to make money? How are you selling it? Through what channels are you selling it? And how are you reaching your target market? And you can spend 1 to 1.5 minutes on this. This is one of the things that we really look for. If a company has not described their business model so that I understand it in their pitch deck, they will not get the opportunity to pitch until they fix it. So for me, it's understanding the market size. You have to get that right. And you have to have a business model that has pricing. Okay, again, we have a poor example here. Apparently, these are the people he thought would be buying his product or service. His service was a software application that was for trade shows. And he thought that the convention space owners would buy that. I don't know why. Convention organizers might. Convention vendors, probably. It made it easier for the people who were attending the trade show to get information about all the vendors and all the other people who were attending the trade show and the convention attendee. So they see 2 revenue streams, a portion of ticket sales. I don't know how they're going to sell that. And selling targeted advertising. Everybody thinks they're going to sell targeted advertising. You know what? It's really hard. It's really hard until you have a bunch of customers. So trying to get vendors to put their ads when you have very few customers is really difficult. It's hard to gain a lot of customers unless you're providing them with something that they really want. So you may eventually get targeted advertising, but it's not going to be one of your first revenue streams. Another poor example. Let's see, targeting small business owners like car dealerships, resellers, etc., for our primary customers. I can't even remember what this company did. Since the service encompasses all other services of selling the used items, they wouldn't be our direct competitor since they are more so like there's a lot of explanation that's going on here, which really shouldn't be on this slide. Okay, so they're going for Android, Apple, on the web, 10% of possible users. Okay, big red flag, right? Why would they think that they're going to get 10%? And then 6% adopters, I believe, to the paid subscription. And I don't know where they pulled that number from. So, I mean, you do have to come up with a guess, but 6%, I'm not sure why. And then here are their competitors: Facebook, Craigslist, eBay, Letgo, OfferUp, and 5 Miles. So again, quite a few large competitors for this software. This is at least a very clean slide. I like the slide. I don't understand the difference in these two customer channels, but I like the slide. So for an individual, it's only $19 a year. Yay, that sounds reasonable. $29 to $1 million. That's a big range. That's a little hard to explain. So that's what I would be asking here. It's like 29 or $1 million. Yeah. So anyway, it's a nice slide. All right, and then this is an actual retail product, and he did a nice job of saying the wholesale price for small and large, the retail price, small and large, the cost to manufacture. Like that's all the information I need to know, except for who he's selling it through. And he was selling it through like big box home improvement stores. This was a bench that you could put packages in, and so they wouldn't be as visible to porch pirates. All right, traction. Remember I said traction is sales? So we're only going to put a slide in with sales if we have sales. If we have the deep need to explain all of the progress that we've made so far without making one sale, then we're going to include a milestone slide. And I don't find them to be very worthwhile, but hey, you can have one if you want one, as long as you make it clean and it has very few words on it. All right, so you're only going to spend a minute on traction. This is the thing that if you do have traction, that's going to catch the investor's eye. So you want to show time and money, how much you're growing.
Maggie,
So-
we have a question online. Sorry to cut you.
Well, I was still talking.
You went once you finished. I thought you paused.
Okay. You want to show growth month over month or year over year, whatever is appropriate. And if it's a software product or subscription type product, you want to tell us about your CAC, cost to acquire a customer, and LTV, lifetime value. If you're very new in the market, you may not have accurate numbers on what your lifetime value is going to be. Your lifetime value is the average length of time that a customer sticks with you. And customer retention. Yes, the question.
Question is, would you place customer reviews or customer interactions such as photos in the pitch deck?
Not me. Oh, the question was, would you put customer reviews or customer photos or interactions in the pitch deck? I mean, if you talk fast and you're getting through your deck and you've got 10 minutes, okay, you can include that. But generally speaking, if it's a customer review, it's going to be wordy. And again, then you're asking people to read it. If you've got, a customer who says, sis boom ba, maybe you can include that. But again, there's the risk of including that kind of thing and having people spend too much time reading the slide.
What about like a Yelp review or something if you have 4.5 stars to 5? Like, did you?
Emphasize what? A quote? Yes, if you have, one quote, big letters, and you can say, this is typical, 95% of our customers say this about our product. Yeah, that's persuasive. Sure. A Yelp review. Yelp reviews tend to be stars and then words.
Just stars. Like,
Just stars?
yeah, just the stars. Okay, you have this many stars on.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't sway me, but sure.
Okay.
All right, here's a traction slide from a subscription company. This lady was selling underwear, and she did it to solve her own problem. She was working in Silicon Valley. She had no time to shop, and she would just wear her underwear until it got really ratty. And so she did a startup weekend, and it sort of penciled out. And so she actually did start this business, but trying to gain traction against other companies, what she found was there was a gap in the market for sexy lingerie for large size women. And so that's where she went. Your team slide. Team slide can be very persuasive. I would say if you have exited founders, they've done it once or twice. Oftentimes they will put their slides up front saying that to investors, you can trust us, we've done this before. I'm a little skeptical about that. If they've done it one time and it was their first try and they had big success, to me, the odds are they're going to fail the second time. The third time, they may know more about how they assumed everything was going to go the second time and be more watchful on that. But if they've had a few failures and then they've had at least one success, then it's okay to put your slide up front because you do have a track record. I've also seen in companies that are based on university technology, IP that the university has, that the professors love to put themselves up front because, you know, they're experts in their field. And so they think that that's very persuasive about the technology. My concern with that is that if you're such a great technologist, who do you have on your team who's a good business person who has done this before? Because you can have all the technology you want. If you can't get out there, raise money, make sales, it's just going to flounder. All right, so our purpose here is to say why your team at this time will make this company successful. So it's good to include not a lot of words. You can include logos of banner companies for which the team has worked. If you are younger and you went to a great school like Stanford, then you can include logos of your universities. But we do want to know, we want to see a picture. We want to know what your role is in this company. And if you have any other accomplishments that you can include in like 3 words as a bullet point, you can include that. You're not going to spend a ton of time on the team. All righty, so here we have a poor example. This has a lot of red flags on it for me. They did put names in here. They said what they were going to do, that the agents were going to pay them. So that means they're not selling it. They've got agents selling it, and they're not technologists. So they're not going to be able to respond quickly and iterate their product because they're using an outside developer. So this was not a great slide there. All right, and then these two, I asked them twice to put their last names on, which they wouldn't do. And then they're telling me stories. Actually, he's telling me what he did. So this is a little bit better than the last one. Yes, a lot of times they tell me flowery things like, oh, we're concerned about sustainability and other things. Is like, no, just tell me how you're going to make this work. And now this is the one I like. So these two guys, they started a company called Snooze. One of them's from Las Vegas. So there are snooze machines in hotels here. And I stay at the downtown Grand, and in a certain tower, they have these machines. So this guy over here, Ellie, he is from Champaign. He's got a PhD in mechanical engineering. He's a former senior engineer at Caterpillar. He specializes in airflow and acoustics. Okay, he's building credibility for me. Then we have this guy. And he's here in Las Vegas. He's done online marketing. He's a former marketing director at Zappos, and he's definitely not a doctor. So they've got a sense of humor. It's a really nice picture, and they've built credibility. So I like this slide. All right, moving on to the ask. Do you have questions about the team slide?
Question? Anybody? No?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hi, everybody. So if you, it's just me,
Yes.
but I'm doing a dog care business, but I have 20 years of experience taking care of dogs, but I also worked as an executive assistant for many years,
Mhm.
which goes to my management and time management and everything. Can I just put myself on there?
Absolutely. I would put a picture of you with a dog.
Okay, I thought
Okay.
that I was going to do that, but okay. I'll
Yeah,
do that.
yes, but I would include, so this lady is saying she has a dog care business and she's been working with dogs for 20 years, but she's also been an executive assistant. And so she has good management skills. So I would definitely highlight both of those. Again, building credibility. For the ask, again, know your audience. I've warned you several times. If they're not accredited investors or you can't be sure that they are, then you can't put all of the deal terms on your slide because that constitutes a solicitation. And the SEC is very, very worried about that kind of stuff. So just be careful. You can be circumspect and say that you're raising $1 million, come talk to me, right? All right. List the use of funds. So we also need to know if you're asking for $100,000, what are you going to spend it on? So that can be done as a percentage, or if we're asking for $100,000 and $75,000 is going to salary and $20,000 is going to marketing and $5,000 is going to office expenses, then you might have a little bit of trouble explaining that because so much money is going to your salary. So you're trying to get paid instead of building the business. So do be careful with that. We would like to know what the vehicle is, and that's not actually on here. So the two most common things that are, well, three. Convertible note, and it is a note, so it's a loan. So that means it has an interest rate. It has a term. And I think we talked about this the other day when we were talking about, oh, no, I'm getting confused. I was talking about predatory investors who were making the founder pay the interest. Usually it doesn't get paid. It just gets wrapped into the end when they call it. So there's convertible note. So we need to know what the terms are for the note. A safe is a simple agreement for future equity. And why this is helpful is because it does not put a valuation on your company. So you can continue to raise without this number in people's heads. You will put a valuation cap on it and you will probably give a discount. These are for your early investors. And then the last thing is a priced round. So a priced round is you're just selling stock. Priced round, yes. All right, so a safe, yes. Future equity.
Is there a question?
Okay, here is an interesting slide. So this was at the end of their deck, and it said at the end of the day, the company is a unique concept that will have blah, 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 blah. He puts a $sign here and does it even way down here, $400,000. You have to read a long way to get to that. And then it doesn't explain at all what it's going for. All the expenses, just all the expenses. Rent, equipment, marketing, payroll. We don't know in what proportion. So they're really not giving enough information. Again, we're kind of lowering credibility when we do it this way. This one is cleaner. Seeking 275K, I can see that really easily. 245,000 of that is for salaries. Yeah, ooh, 20,000 for marketing, 5,000 for employee benefits. Well, that's rolled into salaries. So now we're at 250 for salaries and fringe. 5,000 for working capital. So who knows what the hell that's for? And let's see, did he add everything up? 20, 30, yeah. Okay. So this is not a great ask slide. This person was looking for 300,000 from us to start and to continue to sell the device in Nevada and all 49 other states. Yay, geography. He got the number of states right. But he's not telling us anything else. We don't know what the vehicle is. We don't know what he's going to use the funds for or anything. Oops. I don't usually do transitions, so I was surprised to see that sliding in there. All right. This actually, I don't think it copied very well. So here, in this use of funds, we have kind of a relative use of funds, but it's difficult in that you have to be able to discern the difference between this blue and this blue, and that was operating capital. So use of funds can be easier seen, depicted in different ways. They were looking for 500,000 for 12%, equity or preferred stock. They're not sure. They're probably waiting for their first investor to work that out. And they have an exit strategy for acquisition by a large safety company within 5 years. Okay, so this is not key financial figures. I don't know why that's up there. This is the ask. So let's be careful about what we call our slides. And this could be clearer. I might have remade this. Oh, look, yes, I did. It's the ask. You would put the logo here, and then here we can see in a pie and understand a little bit better what the different spending was going to be on. So he's going 200K for staffing, operating for 30%. So this has both the percentage and the actual amount to make it even clearer. I don't really like using different colors, but it works. They're not in a nice color palette. Oh,
Your
do
pie
they
and your
match?
bonds.
Oh yeah, that's true. Shame on me. All right, here is another example. I mean, if you read through it, there's good information here. There's just too many words. And I think I remade this one too. Yeah, okay, so we're targeting 600K. We've got 400K committed. That's great. We're going to use 70% of the funds on marketing and sales, 30% on technology enhancements, and we have an exit strategy, and this is what it is. And they're going to tell you. Okay, back here, did he talk about exit strategy? Yeah. Series A in the spring, and position the company for sale in 3 to 5 years. And he should be telling us who his target acquirers are. So that's just a little easier to see. Yes, ma'am.
How does borrowing the money work with a nonprofit?
Borrowing money for a nonprofit?
Getting money, getting a loan.
The nonprofit is seeking a loan. Well, they will likely have to have some collateral in order to gain a loan. Otherwise, you have to get your little pen ready and you just start writing grant requests. You're not likely to get an investor unless they're a true believer in whatever your cause is. So investors and nonprofits generally don't go together. For loans, loans are easier when you do have collateral. Okay, but nonprofits typically have to learn how to write grants and you're constantly chasing them. Trust me, I know. Okay. Other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hold on.
One second, she's coming.
I'm coming.
For like a small tech startup, let's say they want $1 million and the first investors are very key to their kind of validity and getting traction. Have you ever seen a deal where raising $1 million, let's say the first investor puts in 250,000 and they make a deal where they put terms on that, that when other money's raised in 6, 12, 18 months, they get their 250 back?
That is not a typical, so I hope everybody heard the question. It's about an investor in a tech startup and they've put 250,000 in. It sounds like the total they think they want to raise is $1 million, but they're doing it in tranches. The 250,000 is an investment. Early stage investors in tech startups are looking for the 30 to 50x return.
Yeah, bigger.
They
payoff.
do not expect to be paid back slowly and soon. They expect to wait 7 to 10 years for the big exit. So real estate people tend to think that way, that they're going to start paying dividends back to investors. That's not how it works in the tech world.
So they just get a bigger piece of whatever pie is available.
Yeah, they're going to get
Different
diluted over time.
Yeah, like, so if they're gonna give 30% of the company for $1 million, the 250 may get 10 or 12 or 14% of the 30.
Well, those terms will be
Yeah,
negotiated.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
Any other-
definitely. Yes, they're going to, yeah, and then they're going to come back to them too. So in a later round, they're going to come back to their earlier investors and say, we're making progress, we got traction, you should stay at your same level. So that means you need to give more money because these other investors are coming in. You would be diluted, or you can top up and keep your same percentage.
Any other questions? Oh, come.
Why is it necessary to have the exit strategy?
Again, gaining credibility or losing credibility. If you are taking on investors, as a tech startup is, the investors want to know that you're not just in the weeds and grinding every day, that you're building a business, but you have this view that it is a great add-on product for Amazon. It's a great add-on product for Microsoft, so that there is an acquisition at the end. So that's when the investor will get paid out, when the company is acquired by another company or it goes public. The odds of going public are quite low. The odds of being acquired, if you have a product that is well loved and you have a lot of sales, then there is likely a company that will acquire you.
So maybe a better question would be, which company should have an exit strategy?
Well, yes, when you're getting into business, you should understand what kind of business you're building. Are you building a business that will support you and your family for a couple of generations, that you want to keep it in the family? Then maybe a small business loan is something that you need to get started. Or maybe down the road, you look at revenue-based financing because you're making money. You want to open a second location and you've got enough cash flow where you could pay back somebody who was giving you an infusion of cash to open that second location. So it depends on how you're starting your business and what you're hoping to achieve. All right, the last slide. Oh, another question?
No, I'm just checking.
Okay. All right. Last slide should be a thank you slide with the company logo, the company contact, and a thank you. You can repeat your ask if you just want to remember or remind people. If you started with your ask in the beginning, it's a good idea to do it again at the end. Now, remember, I was asking you on the other day, what's the most important slide in your deck? So now that we've gone through most of this, I guess we can stop for this, but what do you think the most important slide in the deck is? The contact slide. Yes, because remember, we're on a blind date. Okay, we're trying to make a good impression. If we don't give them our phone number, we're never going to hear from them again. So the contact slide is, if you get everything else right, it's the most important slide in the deck. All right, so just some style notes. Again, we want one idea per slide. We want to use large fonts so they can be seen in the back of the room. We want minimal background elements, nothing that's distracting. I don't like page numbers. Some people do. That's up to you. Video, it's getting better that you can play a video, but the sound is going to fail. So if you include video, be prepared to talk over it, and don't include a lot of music because that's just not going to work. It'll work 3 times, and then when you're in front of the investor that you really want to impress, it's not going to work. Okay, use very simple charts if you are using charts, and don't use more than 2 photos per slide. Again, that's distracting unless the whole slide is a collage, and in some cases that might work. Thank you. All right, any final questions? Okay, I've gone over by about 5 minutes, so I'll go ahead and answer your question. No, it probably would be slightly different. Yeah, again, you should know your audience. So what are distributors going to be interested in? Like, what's your turn time? What are your terms? Those kinds of things.
Question was, is she going to use the same pitch deck for distributors as she will for investors? Answer is no. And
Yes.